June Keller thought keeping her head down was the safest way to survive. After all, the battlefield had taken enough from her, her leg, her friends, her name. But when 4 drunk bikers mocked a young waitress and shoved her to the floor of a quiet Florida diner, something in June snapped. Then, 30 minutes later, the sound of a military convoy rolled down Ocean View Drive, and the town would never forget what happened next. But before we dive in, comment below where you're watching from today. And if you love stories full of unexpected twists and life-changing moments, please like and subscribe. They've got us boxed in, Keller. South Alley's compromised. Hold for the extract. 10 seconds. 10's too long. They're moving in. Wait for the bird. The last thing she remembered was the heat, not the scorching sun, but the searing, metallic breath of panic clinging to every inch of her gear. Dust coated her tongue. Then, the explosion. Blinding. A pressure wave that folded time into silence. June didn't hear the screaming, only saw it. Wide mouths, staggering limbs, a severed radio antenna spinning through the air like a javelin. Then, through the haze and debris, she saw it, the rotors cutting through smoke like divine blades. The Black Hawk. It was coming in hard. She reached out to pull someone, Santos, Reeves, but her hand grasped only fabric. A helmet rolled past, her legs weren't working. And then, darkness. The breeze touched her first. It rolled in from the ocean with a weightlessness that almost felt cruel. It smelled like salt and diesel, and it slipped across the cracked linoleum of the anchor grill, just like it had that day in Kandahar, before the ambush, before everything splintered. June Keller sat quietly in her corner booth, the coffee cooling untouched before her. The ceramic cup bore a faded eagle and anchor emblem, a gift from the owner to the ones who served. She never drank more than 2 sips. Across the room, Emily shuffled nervously behind the counter, brushing crumbs from a laminated menu. The girl was all elbows and oversized flannel, her apron strings tied in a crooked bow. She offered June a timid smile, the kind that tried to be respectful without staring too hard at the prosthetic. June returned the gesture with a faint nod. That was how she preferred things. Simple, clean, unnoticed. "Afternoon, Commander," came a low, gravelly voice. June looked up to see Mr. Ray, stooped but alert, easing onto his usual stool near the window. His Durav-2 cap was spotless. His hearing aid whined softly as he leaned his cane against the table leg. "Just June," she corrected gently. He gave her a look that said, "You earned that title." Outside, a seagull shrieked. The lazy thrum of waves beyond the parking lot played harmony to the lull of silverware and ceiling fans. It could have been a postcard moment, if not for what followed. Engines. Loud, guttural, and unrepentant. The kind that made the windows vibrate before anyone even saw them. The locals stiffened. June's fingers paused over the pie crust. 4 bikes roared into view. Black, dirty, chromed to hell. The men on them were just as rough, sunburned, beer-bellied, bandanas hiding yellowed teeth and worse intentions. The door flung open. The noise entered with them. Emily flinched. No one said a word. Just the faint sound of Mr. Ray's coffee cup clicking gently against its saucer. A quiet warning, echoing what everyone in the room already knew. Trouble had arrived. The scent of grease, salt, and burnt rubber hung in the air like a warning flare. June didn't flinch, not visibly. But her grip on the coffee cup tightened. The bikers swaggered in with the overconfidence of men who had never truly been told no. They were loud, unfiltered, with leather vests stained from road grime and sweat, each bearing skull patches, jagged lightning bolts, and one chilling phrase stitched in blood-red thread. No gods. No masters. The first man, tall, square-headed with a gut that stretched his vest open, tossed his sunglasses onto the counter like he owned the place. He barked at Emily before she could even greet them. "Get us 4 coffees, sweetheart. Strong, and don't water it down like last time." Emily gave a tight nod, voice barely audible. "Of course." Another, younger and lankier, leaned in from behind her as she turned to the coffee machine. "And bring it over yourself, darlin'. I tip better when I see it shake." The other 2 snorted, laughing. The youngest one slapped the table in front of him, which rattled the utensils in their baskets. Emily's fingers fumbled slightly as she reached for the mugs. June watched from her booth, silent. The memory of heat and sand was still lingering in her bones, and the scent of oil from their jackets wasn't helping. But it was the shift in Emily's posture, the slight hunch, the forced calm in her movements, that began to stir something in her. It was a posture June had seen too many times. In civilians under occupation. In children dodging gunfire. In the mirror. The biker with the tattoos up to his throat leaned across his chair as Emily approached with the tray. "Tell me something, honey. Do you smile for every customer, or just the cripple in the corner?" June's fork froze halfway through the pie. The entire diner stilled. Emily said nothing, just set down the cups quickly, one by one. Her cheeks flushed red, and her eyes darted toward the floor. "Oh, we embarrassed you?" said the gut-heavy one. "She's blushing. Hell, maybe I'll let her sit on my lap while I finish my coffee." "That's enough." The voice wasn't loud, but it sliced through the room like a snapped cable under tension. June had turned her head toward them. Calm, centered. Her tone held no anger, just an unmistakable finality. The laughter died instantly. 4 heads turned. The biggest biker narrowed his eyes. His lips curled into something between a sneer and a dare. "Excuse me, Grandma?" June didn't reply. Didn't know the antique in the corner had a mouth on her. The lanky one chimed in. "You mind your own wheels. This ain't Normandy." A beat. Mr. Ray's teacup made its faint click against the saucer again. Still no one else spoke. June placed her fork down neatly. Then she looked at Emily. "Are you all right?" Emily nodded too quickly. "I'm okay." But she wasn't. The gut-heavy biker stood and walked, stomped over to June's table. His shadow blocked the light from the window. He leaned down, breath reeking of whiskey and old sweat. "Let me guess. You one of those soldier girls? Served sandwiches to the real men?" He tapped her shoulder. "Tell you what, you shut up, and I'll let you sit there till we're gone." June didn't move. Her voice remained quiet. "You should leave." He laughed. "Or what?" Then suddenly, violently, he shoved the side of her wheelchair with his boot. The chair lurched, its wheels twisting on the linoleum. It tipped. June's body hit the ground hard, shoulder first. Her tray crashed beside her, coffee soaking the floor in a spreading brown arc. The entire diner gasped, but no one moved. Emily shrieked and rushed over, dropping to her knees beside June. "Oh my God, I'm sorry. Are you okay?" she whispered, grabbing for her hand. June's left palm was bleeding, scraped against the sharp edge of a coaster rack. Her artificial leg had bent awkwardly in the fall, but she didn't acknowledge the pain. She didn't even wince. She just looked up, her eyes locked on the biker. He was laughing again, but less loudly now. The room had gone even quieter. Too quiet. Mr. Ray stood slowly, using his cane to push himself upright. His voice was low but steady, aged but sharp. "That's enough. That woman served this country with more honor than you'll ever know." The big biker turned his gaze from June to Ray. His amusement twisted into irritation. "You got a death wish, old man?" He took a step toward Mr. Ray. "You want to join her on the floor?" Ray didn't flinch. Not because he wasn't afraid, but because fear had long ago ceased to control him. "I serve too," he said. "You don't scare me." The biker's lip curled. He raised a hand, no fist yet, but the signal was clear. Tension spiked through the air like static before a lightning strike. June reached up and clutched Emily's wrist. "Emily, back up, now." The girl obeyed, stumbling away toward the counter, pale and shaking. June shifted, trying to push herself upright, but her shoulder trembled. Her left hand slid in the spilled coffee. The biker leaned back, readying himself to lunge at Mr. Ray. Then, a low, smooth rumble outside. Everyone's attention snapped to the window. A black SUV had pulled into the gravel lot, its chrome grille gleaming under the fading sun. Its windows were tinted darker than state law allowed. The biker paused. The vehicle idled. Then, click. The engine shut off. A door opened. A man stepped out, dressed in full Navy service uniform, dark blues pressed razor sharp. His posture was impossible to miss. Tall, deliberate, military to the bone. He adjusted the brim of his cap as he closed the door behind him. A moment of stillness. The biker's lips parted slightly. He took a step back from Mr. Ray. One of the others muttered under his breath, "Is that? No, can't be." But it was. Admiral Michael Arcane was walking toward the door, and he wasn't in a hurry. June was still on the ground. Emily stared, jaw slightly open. Mr. Ray exhaled through his nose like a soldier hearing a bugle he hadn't heard in 70 years. Kane pushed open the glass door and stepped inside. He took 2 strides into the room and stopped. He didn't speak. He didn't scan the crowd. His eyes locked on June. Her hand still rested on the tile, palm bruised and red. "Commander Keller," he said evenly. "I came as fast as I could." For a breathless moment, everything stood still. Admiral Kane's polished shoes echoed softly against the diner floor as he stepped further in, the weight of his presence settling over the room like a storm cloud. His navy blue uniform bore medals that shimmered under the fluorescent lights, subtle but unmistakable. The silver stars on his shoulders caught every eye. June had seen him in battlefield grime, shouting over rotor blades, bleeding through his sleeve with a smirk. But here, now, he was composed, impeccable. The very image of authority. He didn't look at the bikers, he only looked at her. "Commander Keller," he repeated, "are you hurt?" June shifted, her shoulder tensing as she tried again to rise. Emily moved to help, but Kane was already beside her. Without needing to ask, he extended a gloved hand and steadied her by the arm. It wasn't showy, it wasn't performative, just quiet strength from one warrior to another. June met his eyes briefly, then gave the faintest nod. "I'm fine." Kane turned. Now, he looked at the bikers. The largest one, still standing closest to Mr. Ray, drew back half a step as if sensing something he didn't fully understand. The lanky biker sitting in the booth squinted, squirming in his seat. "Wait a sec," he mumbled. That's Admiral Kane, isn't it? From the news? SEAL guy?" The room vibrated with tension. The third biker scoffed, unconvinced, his breath thick with beer. He leaned back, draped his arm over the booth. "So? It's just some fancy soldier. What's he gonna do? Lecture us to death?" A laugh followed, forced, uneasy. The fourth biker, the one with tattoos crawling up his neck, didn't laugh. He was still staring at the Admiral. His pupils contracted slightly. The air had changed. Admiral Kane's voice remained level, his hands behind his back. "One of you shoved a decorated veteran to the ground. You mocked a servicewoman in public. You threatened an elderly war hero. In my house? That's not just dishonorable, it's criminal." The big biker stepped forward, trying to regain dominance. "You ain't a cop," he growled. "You don't tell me what's what." Kane tilted his head slightly, the way a commander might at a field briefing just before issuing orders that would turn tides. "No," he said. "But I called them, and right on cue. Sirens. Not just one, multiple. Blue and red lights flashed through the diner's wide windows like an angry ocean of authority. Outside, dust curled from tires as local sheriff cruisers, military Humvees, and a pair of white vans with military police emblazoned across their doors rolled into the lot. The bikers froze. Even the one who'd scoffed began to shift in his seat. The laughter had died. Only the low whine of engines and the piercing scream of sirens remained. Doors flung open, uniformed men stepped out, state officers, MPs, even 2 Marines in dress uniform. The Pentagon patch gleamed on one sleeve. Another officer wore a badge from the Department of Veteran Affairs. Inside the diner, no one moved. Then came the heavy footsteps. They entered as one unit, disciplined, tight, silent. The bikers stood now, all of them. But their bravado had drained. Whatever they had drunk was evaporating with each passing second. Kane stepped aside as the officers formed a wall between the bikers and the rest of the room. An MP addressed the group, voice clipped, efficient. 4 suspects involved in an aggravated assault against a disabled veteran and a senior civilian. The big biker barked, "This is insane. We didn't even touch the old man." But June spoke then. From her booth, still bruised, still upright, her voice cut through the room like steel. "You shoved me. You laughed while I fell. You threatened Mr. Ray." Mr. Ray raised his hand slowly in acknowledgement, his weathered face expressionless. Emily stood silently behind the counter, trembling, but not afraid anymore. The biker looked around as if waiting for someone to defend him, to vouch for him, to laugh and pretend it was all a misunderstanding. No one did. Admiral Kane walked up beside June again, looking toward the MP. "They'll cooperate. If they don't," he paused, "call me again." A tension cord snapped then. The bikers didn't resist as they were escorted out, handcuffed, heads lowered, each step heavier than the last. Outside, the townsfolk had begun to gather. No one cheered. No one shouted. It was a quiet reckoning. Inside, June finally exhaled. Admiral Kane looked down at her, then reached into his pocket. He pulled out a familiar object, an old flip phone, scuffed and worn. "Only one number saved," he said quietly. "I canceled a meeting at my office." June offered the faintest smile. "Sorry to pull rank." "You didn't," he replied. "You just reminded me who taught me how to stand my ground." The two stood together for a moment. 2 ghosts of old wars, surrounded by echoes of a new kind of battlefield. The pie sat untouched on the table, but justice had been served. Outside, the flashing lights slowly dimmed as the police cruisers and military vehicles rolled away, one by one. The crowd of silent onlookers had begun to disperse, leaving behind only scattered murmurs and glances cast back toward the diner windows. Inside, the anchor grill was still caught in a hush. Even the ceiling fan seemed to slow its lazy spin, as if unwilling to disturb what remained of the charged silence. June sat motionless for a moment, her hands still curled near the edge of the booth, palms scraped and red. Her pie sat beside her, untouched, the fork resting where she'd left it before the storm began. The adrenaline was fading now, leaving behind a dull ache in her shoulder and a slow pulse thudding behind her ribs. Admiral Kane stood beside her, his posture just as rigid as it had been when he entered, shoulders square, eyes scanning, presence commanding. But now, with the threat removed, something softer settled at the edges of his face. He looked down at her with the quiet understanding of someone who'd spent too many years reading pain between the lines. "You should get that cleaned," he said gently, nodding at her hand. "I've had worse," she replied, her voice dry but steady. He let out a soft exhale, somewhere between a chuckle and a sigh. Emily reappeared from behind the counter, a small first aid kit clutched against her chest. Her hands trembled as she approached, but her voice didn't waver this time. "May I?" June nodded. "Thanks, kid." Emily knelt beside her, cleaning the scrape with careful, silent movements. The sting was sharp, but June didn't flinch. "I'm sorry," Emily whispered. "I should have said something sooner." "You did fine," June said. "It's not your job to fight wolves." Emily blinked, her eyes brimming, but she blinked it away quickly, refocusing on the wound. Across the room, Mr. Ray had returned to his stool, his cane resting beside him like an old rifle after a long patrol. His coffee was cold now, but he didn't seem to mind. He watched June with an expression of quiet reverence, eyes glinting beneath his worn cap. "It's been a long time," Kane said, settling into the booth across from her. "Since Kandahar?" June asked, raising an eyebrow. "Since I saw you let someone else fight your battles." She smirked faintly. "I was enjoying the coffee. Not worth the fall." "No," she said, "but maybe the lesson was." The air between them settled. The room was slowly beginning to breathe again. Tables creaked under shifting weight, cutlery clinked softly, and someone even turned the radio back on. A slow, crackly tune from the 70s hummed from the speakers like a lullaby after war. Admiral Kane reached into his coat pocket and slid something across the table. It was the flip phone. June stared at it, her expression unreadable. "Didn't think it still worked," she said after a pause. "Neither did I," Kane replied. "But when I saw your name on the screen..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. She picked it up with her unbandaged hand, turning it over slowly. "Thanks for coming." "I never left," he said simply. Something lodged in her throat for a moment, something not quite words. She swallowed it down. "Did they know who I was?" she asked. "They will now," he said. "Not because of me. Because you showed them. I didn't want that." "Doesn't matter," you stood. "You always do." June looked out the window where only the tracks of the SUV tires remained in the dust. The ocean was starting to darken, turning from gold to deep indigo as the sun dipped closer to the horizon. Emily returned with a clean rag, wiping the table without being asked. She glanced at June, and this time her smile didn't carry fear. It held something steadier. Admiration. Strength. Maybe even courage. "Would you," she hesitated, "mind if I asked to take a picture with you sometime?" June arched an eyebrow. "Why?" "So I don't forget today." June didn't answer right away. Then she gave a slow nod. "One condition. Anything. You stand tall in it." Emily's smile widened just slightly. Admiral Kane stood and adjusted his collar. His shadow stretched across the table, long and sharp beneath the diner lights. "I should head back. The office is not known for forgiving missed meetings." June gave him a mock salute. "Tell them I'll write a note." He grinned, just barely, and turned to go. But at the door, he paused, looking back over his shoulder. "You ever think of coming back?" "To what?" "Anything. Command, advocacy, even teaching." June looked down at the phone in her hand. "I've thought about disappearing more than I've thought about leading." "You disappeared long enough, June." He nodded once more and left. The door closed with a soft click. June looked around the diner. Mr. Ray was smiling into his coffee. Emily was chatting with a customer. Life was returning, hesitant but hopeful. She picked up her fork. The pie was cold, but the crust was still good. 2 weeks passed. Florida's coast remained unchanged. The waves still breathed against the sand with the same quiet rhythm. The seagulls still circled above the boardwalk like feathered sentinels. But something had shifted, at least in the small world of the Anchor Grill. June rolled into the diner later than usual that day. The usual 4 p.m. Sunday ritual had turned into a casual arrival time, sometimes earlier, sometimes not until dusk. She still chose the window booth. Still ordered the same thing, black coffee, peach pie. But the town didn't look at her the same way anymore. Not with pity, not with curiosity, with respect. "Commander," Emily said with a bright grin as she approached, "I saved you the last slice." June smirked. "Is that so? You sure you didn't eat it yourself?" Emily leaned closer and whispered like she was sharing classified intel. "I thought about it." She placed the plate down and slid into the opposite side of the booth like it was the most natural thing in the world. 2 weeks ago, she would have hovered awkwardly and waited for permission to speak. Now she sat like a teammate, like family. "So?" Emily began, tapping her fingers against the table. "It's up." June raised an eyebrow. "What is?" Emily smiled and turned, pointing to the far wall behind the counter, above the cash register, nestled between a framed flag and a faded newspaper clipping of World War II veterans. It was a new photo, a candid one. June, seated in her chair at the window, a subtle smile on her face. Behind her stood Admiral Kane, straight-backed and composed. Emily, barely holding in her excitement, stood to the side, her arm draped over June's shoulder like a proud daughter. Above the frame were 3 words, hand-lettered in gold. She stood anyway. June stared at it for a long moment. She didn't smile, but her throat tightened just a little. "Didn't think I agreed to that." "You didn't," Emily said. "But Mr. Ray did, said it wasn't just yours. He's still using that cane like it's a weapon, only when customers complain about the jukebox." June chuckled softly, then sipped her coffee. It was hot today, just right. From the corner of her eye, she noticed 2 teenagers by the door nudging each other, whispering, glancing at her. They didn't laugh. They didn't point. After a minute, the boy approached her, skinny, red-cheeked, wearing a JROTC pin on his backpack strap. "Ma'am?" he asked quietly. June turned her head. "Yes? I just wanted to say thank you for your service." She nodded. "What's your name?" "Caleb." "Well, Caleb, you planning to serve?" He hesitated, then nodded. Thinking about it. She looked him over. Not much older than she was when she enlisted, eyes still wide, hopeful, unscarred. "Then take this," she said, reaching into her coat pocket. It was a folded letter, not sealed, but worn at the corners. "What is it?" he asked. "Advice, from someone who's been where you might go." He accepted it with both hands like it weighed more than it looked. "Thank you, ma'am." "Earn it," she replied. As he left, Emily leaned forward. "What was that?" "A promise," June said, her voice low. "To never disappear again." A sudden breeze swept through the diner as the door opened. Mr. Ray entered with his usual careful pace, his cane tapping in rhythm. "Afternoon, Commander," he called out like it had always been her title. "Afternoon, sir," she replied. He slid into his seat at the window and lifted his coffee like a toast. "Quiet today?" "I liked quiet." "You earned it." June nodded. Outside the window, a motorcade passed by. Just one vehicle, black, government plates. It didn't stop, but someone in the front passenger seat saluted through the glass as they rolled past. June didn't return the salute, but her eyes followed the vehicle until it turned the corner and vanished. Emily pulled a folded piece of paper from her apron pocket and set it on the table. "You got another request." "Oh? Local school. They want you to speak, Veterans Day Assembly." June tapped the paper once, thoughtfully. "They think I'm good with kids?" "I told them you're terrifying and brilliant. They said perfect." She folded the paper and tucked it away. "I'll think about it." The door jingled again, this time a couple of Marines in uniform. Young, shaved heads, fresh off base. They walked past June, then paused. "Ma'am," one said, nodding. "Heard about what happened here." June looked at him, said nothing. "If it were me," the other added, "I'd have decked them." June raised an eyebrow. "That's why it wasn't you." They chuckled and moved on. Emily looked at June. "You're kind of a legend now." June sipped her coffee. "I was always a legend, you just didn't know it." They both laughed. A silence settled again, but this one was different. It wasn't tense or watchful or sad. It was earned. June sat quietly, her coffee warm between her hands, watching the world drift by through the diner's wide front window. The booth felt more like hers now, not a hiding place but a perch, a place of choosing, not retreat. Outside, the sidewalk bustled again. Emily took orders like a seasoned pro. Mr. Ray dozed lightly in his seat, his cane resting like a loyal sentry at his side. The jukebox in the corner hummed something old and easy, like it had finally let out the breath it had been holding. June didn't say much. She didn't need to. She looked out toward the ocean, where the sun dipped low behind the curve of the coastline. A gull wheeled silently in the sky, and the surf curled against the shore in gentle repetition. For the first time in years, she wasn't bracing for anything. She wasn't remembering what was lost. She was simply here, alive, still. The waves rolled in again, and this time, they didn't sound like echoes of war. They sounded like peace, like a chapter closing, and another one finally beginning.